So I kind of hesitated on even wondering if I was really wanting to make a post-fight review of Saul Alvarez versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Because I mean, what exactly can I really say about this fight other than I mean, it was really a farce. It was really just a total circus. Um, it wound up basically being like an infomercial, a paid infomercial for Canelo versus Gennady Golovkin coming up in September 16th. Which is a good fight. I'm glad that that's finally made, signed, sealed, and delivered, done. No funny business going on, or hopefully not. I mean, I'm sure there's probably still some kinks that are gonna be worked out, and there's always extra tricks up the sleeve, or usually always. But in any case, I mean, Alvarez dominated Chavez the way a lot of most of the experts I think were generally kind of picking to happen. Chavez being even just competitive against Alvarez was largely predicated off of Chavez being able to make the weight healthy and also being able to execute a proper game plan. Two things that he may not have necessarily even done. He was blaming the weight. Originally I was thinking that he was making the weight healthy and everything. But in there, I mean, even though he did look like he had a certain amount of viability, he didn't necessarily look like especially energetic. Which isn't to say that he didn't make the weight healthy, but maybe not optimally at the very least. And just overall, the boxing game plan, the game plan that I guess Nacho Beristain did put up for him, he just it just wasn't working, and it wasn't working from the very first round. And it seemed like I don't know, he was almost like doing trying to do like a Sergio Martinez fight part two, where he was just trying to get Alvarez arm weary from beating his ass for a bunch of rounds, and then being able to kind of turn it on. I guess he said in the aftermath, in the post fight, not in the post fight interviews, but in the post fight press conference, that basically the game plan was to try and take Alvarez into the middle round, see if Alvarez can maybe gas and try and turn it on a little bit there. But even then, I mean, there were moments where he had Alvarez up against the ropes, and he just didn't even throw. It's fights like these that can make somebody really just real cynical about the sport of boxing. Just insofar as, I mean, there's a lot of people that think Chavez took a dive. A lot of people think that maybe he got some sort of paycheck, whether by virtue of money, the betting against himself or whatever else. But I mean, outside of any funny business or whatever, Alvarez basically just did whatever he wanted in there. It was just a total exhibition. It was Chavez kind of going in there, taking everything that Alvarez had to offer. Alvarez didn't look any more powerful at 164 than he has been as a light middleweight or a middleweight. I mean, part of that is credit to Chavez's chin. He's always had a pretty solid chin. I mean, I do think Alvarez still has a fair amount of power, but is it like elite middleweight power? I don't think so. I never really thought so necessarily to begin with. I think he has really good power. If he was in there against David Lemieux, I think, yeah, he knocks David Lemieux out, especially once Lemieux starts getting tired. But against somebody like a Golovkin, that's a whole different animal. This isn't a lazy and drained Chavez. This isn't completely drained to nothing Angulo. This isn't a drained Chinny Kirkland. This isn't Liam Smith. This is a whole different animal in there. This isn't an Erislandy Lara or Austin Trout or Floyd Mayweather, who, although great boxers, were fighting a very finesse style. This is a guy who is not only a very good boxer, but a guy who is just as physically capable in terms of brute strength as Alvarez is, and a guy that is very good at timing his power punches as well. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself with regards to just previewing Alvarez and Golovkin. That time will come. Alvarez pretty much did whatever the hell he wanted against Chavez Jr. And we'll see what happens against Golovkin. I definitely favor Golovkin in the fight. I think ultimately this is going to be not only Alvarez's true trial by fire, but like his comeuppance. I am somebody that rates Golovkin on that level of like true eliteness, like a Floyd Mayweather, like a Roman Gonzalez, like both Kovalev and Ward. And Alvarez hasn't fought that level of true eliteness since Floyd Mayweather. And the thing is, Floyd Mayweather, even with that true eliteness, he didn't have the size and the power to really hurt Alvarez. If he did, he would have really messed Alvarez up in that fight. He really would have, because he outboxed the crap out of him. And you know, when you couple that level of eliteness in terms of skill, technical ability, with that physicality and that power and everything, I think it's just going to be bad news for Alvarez. I mean, I definitely think Alvarez is a live fighter in the fight. You know, I think he's going to try his ass off as well. You know, I think he definitely has a chip on his shoulder. You know, as much as a lot of the casual fans, you know, whether American, Mexican, Mexican American, etc., love, you know, have just kind of blind love for him. They're like the people that really know boxing, the real boxing heads, both stateside and in Mexico, and a lot of the Mexican boxing champions really don't respect Alvarez. You know, Manuel Marquez isn't the only one. It's not just Marquez being an old hater, basically. You know, Estrada doesn't respect him. There a lot. I don't think that the likes of Pedro Guevara or Ganigan Lopez respect him. You know, Barrera Morales don't seem to really have very much respect for him. Chavez Sr., you know, has always been pretty meh when it comes to Saul Alvarez. So I think he has a chip on his shoulder. I think he's going to look and try and, you know, really make Golovkin that true signature victory on his ledger that he technically doesn't necessarily have. I mean, it seems like the truly big stages he's really underwhelmed, generally speaking. You know, underwhelmed against Floyd, underwhelmed against Erislandy Lara. It was a draw. You know, it could have gone either way. A lot of people think Lara won. A lot of people think that Lara didn't do anything. Canelo won, etc. It was a draw. You know, it was a stalemate. They both canceled each other out. Lara was too defensive for Alvarez to do much offensively, and you know, Lara wasn't being offensive enough to do much to Alvarez on the flip side. But that's neither here nor there. I think Golovkin beats Alvarez, but like I said before, you know, I'll have plenty of time to preview that in the future. Getting on to the undercard though, Joseph Diaz versus Manuel Tino Avila started off the card. Avila started off the fight, you know, giving Diaz, I think, a good bit of trouble. You know, he was an orthodox fighter versus a southpaw. I think Avila is a really strong technical fighter. Has a lot of the fundamentals really well down pat. And, you know, he's a guy that was doing extremely well as a superman. I mean, you know, came into this fight undefeated, even though he was an underdog, the B-side, etc. You know, he was definitely giving Diaz some technical puzzles to solve. I thought Diaz definitely pulled through. And I thought eventually, you know, he was able to solve those technical puzzles and also use his overall level of agility and his hand speed in order to basically just outpace Avila throughout the fight. You know, just a little bit of that natural talent, that natural like athleticism and agility that he had, where he was able to utilize that in order to neutralize Avila being able to kind of time him as he did early on. You know, I think Diaz is ready for a world title shot. Just as much as, you know, he has been in pretty much the last couple of years. I think Golden Boy's taking a little bit too slow with him. You know, if they could target Lee Selby, I'd pick Diaz in that fight all day. You know, a lot of people, I think, underrate his ability to beat somebody like a Gary Russell. I think he's very, very much live in that fight. I think he's live against Leo Santa Cruz, and I think he's very live, especially against Oscar Valdez, who I think... even though Valdez would have a good advantage in terms of just landing power punches, I think Diaz on the inside is just a little bit sharper and cleaner in there. I think Valdez gets a bit wild at times, which I think could play into Diaz's hands. But, I mean, strong win for Diaz, and I think Tino Avila is definitely still very viable as a top-level fighter, especially if he goes back down to 122. You know, I think that division's a little bit more open for him. Lucas Matisse versus Emmanuel Taylor. Great showing from Matisse. You know, I really expected this fight to be a bit tougher for him. I thought Taylor was a pretty difficult choice of opponent for Matisse, who hasn't fought in a very long time, like a year and a half plus. And Matisse just ran over him. He ran through him. Taylor was able to kind of technically hang with Matisse at times. You know, was able to land a few nice left hooks, a couple of double left hooks, triple left hooks, and here and there. The thing is, Matisse, all it took was one punch for him, and you know he definitely has a chin. Taylor's punches really weren't budging or bothering Matisse very much, and Matisse's punches were absolutely moving Taylor around the ring every time he hit him. Even at times when Taylor was able to block the punches, Matisse was moving him. Dropped Taylor in the third round, and then dropped him in the fifth round. You know, Taylor was able to make the count, and J-Nate wound up stopping it because, I mean, Taylor definitely still didn't have his balance. I mean, Matisse pretty much had him knocked out with the left hook, and then the right one, just the right hand right behind it, just pretty much sat him down and was the overall coup de grace for Matisse. And it's good to see Matisse back in the mix. I think he's very live against anybody at welterweight. He definitely looks like a recharged, resurgent fighter. Under the tutelage of Joel Diaz now, I thought he was setting up his punches very well. I didn't think he was lunging like he used to. I think that was one of the big mistakes, especially that he had against Danny Garcia and Victor Postol, where it's like he was just trying to force everything. He was just lunging into his shots. I think that was a mistake he even made against John Molina. That's how he kind of got clipped and hurt in that fight. But against Taylor, I thought he boxed really well, set up his shots extremely well, set up his power, and got Taylor out of there. And just made easy work of a guy who had been, looking like a bit of a Mr. Upset type fighter. Ran Adrian Broner really close, ran Antonio Orozco really close, and gave Algeria a pretty solid fight. Even though Algeria beat him clearly, he didn't just brutalize him the way Matisse does. But styles make fights. But going on to David Lemieux versus Marcos Reyes, I think a lot of people were really overlooking Reyes in this fight. And, even just looking at his box, like if you would have looked at the fact that, he fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. right after Andre Fanfare. A lot of people actually saw that fight, but might have forgotten that they watched that fight. It was on Showtime and everything. He gave Chavez an okay fight. Chavez definitely clearly won the fight, but, he gave him a scrap. And he gave Lemieux a scrap here as well. Lemieux was able to bully him a bit at times, even though Reyes was the taller fighter and a guy that normally will fight at super middleweight. Lemieux actually outweighed him, interestingly enough. It just goes to show how big Lemieux is for a guy that's been a middleweight all this time. But Reyes, he was able to absorb the punches a lot better than most of Lemieux's opponents. It's not so much that he was bigger than Lemieux, but that he was bigger than most of Lemieux's past opposition. That was the difference. So Lemieux wasn't able to just bully him like he has been in the past, and a lot of his punches, even though Reyes was getting hurt by him, he was able to kind of quickly reset himself and recover. It's not like he was completely out of the fight. He was knocked out on his feet, etc. But there were moments, especially in the mid rounds, as Lemieux started to tire out a little bit. Reyes managed to clip Lemieux a few times, especially with overhand rights. He was able to time him, catch him high on the tempo, and it seemed like Lemieux was looking like he was gonna be in a good bit of danger. But he was able to kind of maintain a little bit better defense, even when he was gassed. I'd say probably by about the 6th or the 7th round, he managed to catch the second wind, and kind of sweep the last few rounds up until the 10th, where I thought Reyes managed to kind of stun Lemieux once again. Although Lemieux, I thought, fought back pretty okay in the 10th round. Lemieux, of course, won that by unanimous decision. And as for Lemieux, I mean, he's at the kind of the gatekeeper level now. He's like the gatekeeper to the elites of the middleweight division. As far as he could potentially fight in the near future, I mean, perhaps the Hassan Ndam Ryota Murata winner coming up here on May 20th. Maybe fight the winner of that, considering the winner is actually going to be the next mandatory for the winner of Golovkin, the next WBA mandatory for the winner of Golovkin versus Canelo. Or maybe he'll jump into trying to get the winner of Billy Joe Saunders against Avtandil Kurtzids. I think he'd be very live against any of the four fighters. I definitely think that Golovkin and Canelo both beat him. I think he's live against those four fighters though. Although, I mean, to varying degrees. I have a feeling that Murata is gonna do some work on Hassan Ndam and kind of emerge as a potential new middleweight star. And Kurtzids and Saunders, this is a difficult one, man. Saunders, I imagine if he's in proper shape, he can outbox Kurtzids, but if he's not in that optimal shape, I think Kurtzids might get to him. And man, Lemieux versus Kurtzids, that is a mouthwatering war. And if something like that could get made, the HBO would definitely sign off on that all day long. That's Lemieux versus Stevens 2.0. That's just a brutal warfare between those two guys, man. And it'd be interesting too, because Lemieux tends to be a bit shorter than most of his opponents. Normally, he's the guy that's kind of lunging into it. Although he wasn't versus Stevens, but I guess that's besides the point. But I think that's going to do it for my overall review of the pay-per-view card featuring Canelo Alvarez and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.